our problem in our business, I will see people there tomorrow who are dear friends of mine I haven't seen in 10 years. You can't, in our business, Mary and I live, I wish you all could be there, and you can be there anytime you want. We have a place you won't believe. When you walked into John Ford's home, if you didn't see all the Oscars, you wouldn't have any idea where the hell you were. And you walk into Houston's home, and if you didn't know the names of all the dead animals he's got strung up on the walls, you wouldn't know who he was. You walk into our house, which we just got, and you know damn well who lives here. And it's, you know, I hit the jackpot 29 years ago, practiced a lot, married everybody, which I thought you should do when you're in your 20s and 30s. And life is better than it's ever been. And the wonderful thing is, I was 84 last week. When you're that age or this age, you're supposed to be wheeled up on the stage. All that's wrong with me is I'm not well yet, but I can still probably go a few rounds and gain some weight back. But you're through with your life. You know, you say, and then I wrote, and somebody reminds you what you wrote, you know. Hell, I have more fun now than I ever had my whole life. And during the period, the reason that we couldn't work, and I'm working on this now, and it's going to be very funny, is I'm too old. What do you mean too old, for Christ's sakes? It took me years to learn all this. And Bert Kennedy and I are going to end up making a picture. It's going to be very funny, where we make a picture in our 80s. And if it's built on the premise that Bert and I will direct the pictures. I'm 84, Bert's 76 or something. And we will sign a contract with whomever we now decide. When you start reading this stuff, they're beginning to write, they remember. And Bert and I will make a list on 3 or 4 pages as the co-directors of what should be done, what shouldn't be done. If this happens, here's what you can do. It's taken us years to make all these mistakes. And then we hire 2 young men your age as directors because we like them and we think they're going to be great one day. And when Bert and I die in the middle of the picture, if they just take those pages and look at them, the show might turn out all right. And that's what the whole premise of the movie's made on. Instead of the counteraction of you're 25, 26 years old. I was 24 when I was made a director, but I didn't direct till I was 25. They didn't have a picture for me to do. And in those days, there was no way to get through with television. There was no way to show somebody what you could do. Now there is. And that's why I say if you've got an opportunity to do something that you know you can't do, you may never get that opportunity again, so do it. All they can do, again, my 30 pounds, I have to go back to where I look like I'm out of Buchenwald. But there are only 2 things in Hollywood that they can do to you. They can lick you, and that's going to be pretty hard again, or they can fire you. Nothing else. So take the shot and do it. Well, Columbia, when I got started there, I didn't know that George Stevens had asked for me. And I was told not to speak to him unless he spoke to me. So I was sitting in a chair as a second assistant, quite away from the company who was making Cover Girl. And I hadn't spoken to Mr. Stevens, who had been working for 5 days. And he came over to me and he said, "When the hell are you going to say hello?" In my opinion, George Stevens was the best director ever and had more personality and more balls than the whole bunch put together. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I want to know all about your career." I said, "Oh, they have time to wait here. Come on." I asked, "Didn't you know I asked for you?" And I said, "No, sir." He says, "Don't call me sir, just come on." So at any rate, we made the picture. And the Columbia in those days wasn't doing a hell of a lot. And we had a fellow that nobody could remember his name, was a guy named Gene Kelly, and they thought one day he would be somebody. And they had the greatest lady in the world, my pal, not like a Hollywood pal, I mean best friend type, whom I met on Blood and Sand when her name was Rita Cancino. And I knew her when she was 16 years old in Tijuana dancing with her father, and she was the leading lady. And then my group of bullfighters. And Columbia was a secondary group of a lot of producers trying to get a studio together. And Harry Cohen was probably, except for Hitler and Mussolini, the most frightening, despicable man you ever saw in your life. And everything I tell you is absolutely true. And that's why I can't direct the screenplay of When in Disgrace, because nobody would believe it, but it's all true. So when I was allowed to come on the set, and of course from then on I had a tennis ball that I carried. And whenever Harry Cohen came on the set, George Stevens hated him so much, I would throw him the tennis ball. And he had a bankboard like tennis, and he would play handball with himself. $100, $200, $300 until Cohen left. So I'd never met Mr. Cohen, and he looked like Mussolini. And I'd heard about him, and I'd been a matador, and I'd played a lot of football. And this is all artificial. This is broken nose, tried to look good, fixed over, plastic surgery. But I wasn't used to what came out of his mouth. So he said, "Tell that son of a bitch over there I want to talk to him." And I said in my book, the son of a bitch he was referring to was about the best son of a bitch and director in the whole world. So I said, I'm sorry, he's busy right now. He said, "Listen, you son of a bitch." And I said, "Cut." You know, I'm 24 years old. I didn't know any better. I said, "Cut." And he said, "What?" I said, "Don't talk to me that way." He said, "And if I do?" I said, "Well, I'll knock you on your ass." And everything went quiet. You know, I said, "Oh my God." And George started to laugh and stopped playing handball with himself. And he said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "Yes, Mr. Cohen, I know who you are." But I said, "Compared to those black bulls coming out of that black hole, you look like the Virgin Mary." The absolute quote. That's how stupid you can be when you're 24. So he said, "Be in my office at 6 o'clock. I want to talk to you." And he left, never saw George. Then I got smart. I thought, Jesus Christ, you know something? You better buy a lot of apples and a lot of pencils to sell, because you're not in the picture business anymore. So I went up at 6 o'clock, and Harry Cohen's office was all carpeting, like a basketball court. It went on forever. And there was a piano, grand piano, when you first came in, and that's all there was. And then way at the back of the room was a gigantic desk, like a fortress, which it really was, to keep drunks from hitting him. And there was a long screen that went from his desk, the corner of the desk, to where the dressing rooms of all the leading ladies started, down that hall. It was always available. And on the right-hand side was the steam bath, and that was the whole office. And if you 3 or 4 were going to be there, there would be 3 or 4 there. If you're there, a lot of chairs. If there were going to be just one, like I was, there's one chair sitting right in front of Harry Cohen's office, and the rest was empty. And he said, "Sit down, young man." So I sat down, and he said, "Would you really have done what you said you'd have done if I'd called you whatever I was going to call you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I would have, and I would have apologized, because I wouldn't have done anything but be polite to you. You're the boss, but there were 200 extras on the set. And I'm me, and nobody's going to call me a son of a bitch in front of 200 extras." He said, "You know something? I'm going to make something out of you, young man." And he did. And somebody asked me in Paris a few years ago, they said, "Mr. Boetticher, pronouncing it right, because nobody does." They said, "Who taught you to be a director?" And I said, "Well, I don't have the luck that Spielberg and the new directors have. There wasn't anybody to teach me. I taught myself." They said, "What do you mean you taught yourself?" I said, "Well, I would do my day's work, and then I would see yesterday's rushes, and I would look at what I had done, and all alone I would say to myself, Jesus, I'm never going to do that again." And after about 15 or 16 pictures, I learned from my mistakes what the hell I was doing wrong. And it's been a great career. But something that all you young men will remember, never have an opportunity to do something that you're not sure you can do. Never say you can't do it. Harry Cohen, and we're getting to your guy, had three young directors against him that were put together by the Briskin unit. And they were going to do the last 2 days of a picture made by a C, D, E, F, G, H director that were so bad you didn't even know their names. And they prepared the last 2 days of the picture, and then the young director, your age, went in and finished the picture. So I was to do the last 2 days of a Lou Landers picture. And Lou Landers was worse than I ever was in my worst days, and they were pretty bad. One of my first pictures was reviewed, a 12-day black and white, and it said this picture wasn't released, it escaped. Now, you can't do any worse than that, so I figured the only way was up. But at any rate, Harry called me in, and I could call him Harry now. That was amazing. I was still an assistant director. And he said, Bud, he said, I want a straight answer, and I'm damn sure I'm going to get it, but don't kid me this time. I need a young director. Can you, honest to God, direct? And I said, of course. Now, very interesting. I had a first assistant director who was about 6'5", and this is very important for you to know. I'm 5'11". I've lost 30 pounds now from the operations and stuff, and I was a boxing champion, and I was a pretty tough guy in those days. So suddenly, I had my own assistant director, a fellow I really liked, who was a fan of mine, who'd been my second assistant as I grew up, named Milton Feldman. And they said that Milton Feldman was my assistant director. So I know I have at least one friend. Now, the other three directors, whom I did not know, were Henry Levin, who turned out great, Bill, whom I learned to really love, and Mel Ferrer, who was a schmuck. The only thing good about Mel Ferrer was his wife. He did pretty well with Audrey Hepburn. So I'm all set. I studied the last part of that. I knew every minute of those last 2 days of the picture. I didn't even know who in the hell was in the first 2 days or who said what or where they stood. I wasn't even sure about my cameraman. And I had really worked. Damn, I'd really worked. And I was ready to show the world that I could direct. And of course, I couldn't. So I was punching the bag at the gymnasium, the Hollywood gym, and there was a beautiful leading lady who was, shall be nameless, who was my girlfriend. And she was gorgeous, and she was a lady, and we fairly well kept it a secret, except Max Arno was the casting director. And Max Arno only wanted one thing in his whole life, my girl. And he wasn't going to get her, and I wasn't quite sure, but I knew he was trying, and I was very, very much his enemy. But I didn't believe what was going to happen to me, and you love this, all of you. So I got a telephone call, and I went over and I picked up the phone. The voice said, Boetticher, and I said, yeah. I said, Max Arno, you're going to do the first 2 days of the picture starting tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I mean, come on. World War III has started, and you're the first to know. So I said, I don't know what they are. He said, that doesn't make any difference. That's it. Take it or leave it. Well, Mr. Cohen was in New York for a week, and I'm dead. I am absolutely dead. I don't even know how to say action yet. So I thought, what should I do? And 3 hours difference in New York. I finally found Harry Cohen at 1 o'clock, which is 4 o'clock New York time, and I told him this catastrophe. And he said, kid, just ad-lib, don't worry about a thing. Just tell him whatever you want, I'll be home in a week. Well, the big problem was, when I walked on the set, it wasn't Milton Feldman. It was Milton Carter, my deadly enemy. And when I had become a second assistant director, I had forgotten to call the leading man one day. And we had a whole company here in San Diego waiting for the mistake. So this guy really hated my guts. And as I say, he was 6'4". And this is the end of this story, which all young men should hear. So I walked on the set unprepared. I was a dead duck. And all of a sudden, Milton Carter, my enemy, now he's my boss, came walking forward. And he went from 6'4" to 6'3", to 6'2", to 6'1", and this big giant who hated my guts kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And all of a sudden I was looking down to him, and he said to me, good morning, sir. I hate to bother you, but could you give us some idea of the first setup now? And I said, yeah, I'll give you the first setup as soon as I have a cup of coffee. And I turned and walked away, and I said to myself, son of a bitch, I'm a director. So that's how it all got started. And about 15 pictures later, when I was really working for the Navy, they wouldn't let me go into service. I was making service pictures, although I was a lieutenant in the Navy. When I had made 15 or 16 pictures, I was doing pretty well until Bullfighting the Lady, and then I hit the jackpot. It's a dreadful business to be in right now, and it's just a damn shame because not too long ago, and I'm talking 20, 30 years ago, it was still an art, you know, like music and painting. There's no art to it now. There are some damn good pictures now. There is a director I really, really care about, and you can't find two guys, and he's much more successful than I will ever be, but Martin Scorsese is a great fan of mine. And I'll have to have Mary tell you two names, but this made me very proud. When they asked Martin Scorsese who he would rather be than anybody in the world.
First Randolph Scott, and then Boetticher.
Isn't that great? Those were his only two answers. I wanted to say, Marty, thank you.
I'm sure you'll get the chance.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have him. Well, he'll be in New York when we go back there.
I'm sure you'll. You must have met him by now. Have you ever?
I'm gonna promise me you won't print this. No, because I want you to hear a very funny story, and it's a word that sometimes you have to use today to get attention. You used to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, "Look, I want to talk to you." Now you have to put it a little stronger. They called me, 3 years ago, honey, wasn't it? About 3 or 4 years ago. And they said, Mr. Boetticher, may we send a camera crew down to your home and your bull ring and with your horses and stuff? And would you get on a horse and wish your friend Martin Scorsese a happy birthday? He'll be 50 next week. And I said, why? And they said, what do you mean, why? I said, I've never met Martin Scorsese. They said, no, we're really serious. This is his birthday next week. I said, I'm really serious. I don't know Martin Scorsese. They said, well, would you do it? And I said, well, I'm honored to do it. I had just told CAA, my agency that I never use, it's so big, it's in the way, believe me, that one of their agents who had gotten in a telephone conversation with me that this gentleman was a malignant cancer on the brain of creativity. So I got a call from my agency, and I thought, oh, they're going to say, don't do things like that, for God's sake. So this was the call. So I said, sure, send them down Saturday, and I'll think of something. So they sent the crew down, and a lot of people were there. And I got on my best horse, and I said, Marty, you know, happy birthday. I know we've never met. But I said, we're not going to talk about your birthday or about motion pictures right now. I just want to tell you what I think of you. You're one of the few people left in this whole world that remembers two words, integrity and class. So in 2 days, I got a call from Martin. And he said, I understand you're coming to New York. And I said, yeah, I'll be there in about a week. I'm going to Harvard, finally. My mother would have loved it. I went to Ohio State to play football. Nobody spoke English. But I was prepared for Harvard and didn't get there. So we did our job in the morning, and we went to his place for lunch, and he had it catered. And his right-hand man and Mary and Marty and me sat down at the table. And we started talking. That's when he said Randolph Scott and Bud Boetticher. I think I blushed a little. And I said, Marty, I now know that you have enough of a sense of humor to bear with me. And of course, this was all phony. And I said, when I knew I was going to wish you a happy birthday, I went upstairs. I didn't want to ad-lib it. And I wrote down with my one finger on my typewriter, which is all I can give him, the one finger on the typewriter. And I wrote the speech that I said I was going to give. And I came downstairs and I put the thing down in front of me and I said, Marty, I want to read to you, because I went to Mary and I said, Mary, let me read this to you, and you tell me seriously, sweetheart, if you think it's appropriate. And Martin's like this, and his right-hand man is like this, and Mary's wondering what in the hell I'm going to say. And I said, dear Marty, I want to fucking well tell you that I think you're one of the fucking best fucking directors in this whole fucking world. And he said, oh, Jesus Christ. He said, I have to talk like that. That's the way the guys in my movies, he said, let me tell you a thing. He said, when they wrote, what was the mama? His first big Boxcar Bertha. He said, when they finished the premiere of Boxcar Bertha and everybody stood up to leave, my mother jumped up and she said, I just want all of you to know I didn't teach him those words. So he loved it. But I mean, that's how all of a sudden we became really great friends. And I'll never know if he was angry or not, but he listened, and I thought his right-hand man was going to say, oh my God. But you have to do it. If you're going to talk like that, those are the street urchins that he made his pictures about. When you've been a matador, and not a very good one, so I got hit a lot, nothing scares you after those bulls. And it helped me a great deal.